by the Shadow Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds. Mr Reynolds, it's good to see you. Let's talk about nurses, Gavin Williamson, Matt Hancock, so much to talk about. I wonder if I could start with nurses. Do you support their strike action?
Look, nobody wants to see a strike take place, but it's a reflection, I think, of the state of the NHS after 12 years of Conservative government. I think if the government is willing to engage and listen to the legitimate concerns that nurses have got, there's a chance to avert it. What I would worry about is they'll play it like they did the rail strikes, play it for politics, not try and resolve the dispute, try and essentially exacerbate it so they can present that as the problem with the NHS when everyone knows it's how the NHS has been run. I think crucially, I heard Stephen Dorrell talk about pay earlier, and obviously that's a part of it. It's also about workload. And if you look at Labour's plan, which is to abolish the non-dom rule, bring in over £3.2 billion and use that to expand the NHS workforce, to address those concerns about workload, that is the kind of thing nurses will want to hear. They'll want to know there's hope for the future, that there's a plan for the future. Now, we've got that. If the government were willing to adopt that, I think they could go some way to resolving this dispute.
Do you support strike action?
Look, I'll support anybody going on strike to improve their terms and conditions. But what I'm saying is I think there's a way to avoid this. I mean, look, this is the first... I mean, there were no strikes in the NHS under the last Labour government. I think this is the first strike nurses are even contemplating pretty much ever. So it tells you how bad things have got that they've got to that position. People have got to listen to them. Politicians, the government have got to listen to them. But I think if they address workload and pay, as our plan would do, I think there's a chance to resolve that.
But what about the 7 million people that are waiting for non-elective procedures?
Well, that, again, is a sign of how bad things have got. I mean, the level of waiting lists and our expectations of when and how long it should take to see a GP compared to 12 years ago, I find it astonishing. And it's actually so significant, it has become, I would say, one of the biggest economic problems facing businesses and facing the country, because you've got so many people not in the labour market, not able to take a job and do work or return to their job because they're not getting the care that they need. So this is more than a health issue. This is about the overall impact on the economy. And I think most patients will understand that everyone in the health service is working extremely hard, worked extremely hard in the pandemic and still is. But they can't do everything unless the government's willing to acknowledge those burdens and put in the kind of investment, the extra 10,000 nurses and midwives we would have every year, the doubling of district nurses, extra health visitors. That's the kind of thing they need to hear. And unless the government changes how it's run the NHS, there'll be no solution to that.
Gavin Williamson's had a proper kicking over the last few days, but wasn't he just doing what chief whips are supposed to do? In other words, keeping MPs in order? No,
and I think the idea that this is how politicians should behave or do behave is wrong. I mean, there's no way he should have been appointed.
Obviously it isn't wrong, because that's what he did.
There's no way he should have been appointed to government. I mean, this is what, 3 appointments under 3 prime ministers and 3 resignations in disgrace. It's terrible judgment from the prime minister to put him in whilst he's under investigation. But for me, this is, why would any prime minister do this? Well, that's because that's the Conservative Party today. You've got to do deals with the likes of Gavin Williamson and Suella Braverman if you want to be Conservative prime minister. And that is why they are incapable of the stable, effective government that everyone wants to see in the UK.
Yeah, but I again make the point that as a chief whip, you have to keep MPs in order, don't you?
Well, you don't keep them in order. You've got a whip is simply how do MPs collectively caucus and make decisions as a group, as a team. It shouldn't be about personal abuse or threatening people or revealing things about their personal lives. And the idea that that's what it's about is a caricature, I think. But it appears that, in some cases, maybe there are Conservative MPs who think that's what it's about. The job of a chief whip, I would say, is to listen to MPs, to feed back what their constituents are telling them and help make better decisions in Parliament as a result. And I don't think that's what he was engaged in.
Plenty of dirty laundry in your party, though. Just looking at a list compiled by the team this morning. April, Liam Byrne, Cabinet Minister in Gordon Brown's Labour government, ostracised a then member of his constituency staff. October this year, Christina Rees bullied, allegedly, members of her constituency staff. Again in October, married male Labour MP reportedly facing investigation in the House of Commons over sexual harassment complaints. This month, a member of the Scottish Labour government accused of taking part in online bullying. So there's bullying on both sides.
Well, look, I'd say the difference is, certainly under Keir Starmer as leader of the Labour Party, we've overhauled our disciplinary procedures. There is action taken when anyone commits wrongdoing and proper investigations take place. I think that stands in stark contrast to what we've seen from Rishi Sunak, which is frankly appointing people he already knows are under investigation and failing to address those issues head on. I expect high standards of all colleagues in Parliament, but where people do transgress on the Labour side, there's a clear, effective system in place. And I don't think the other side can say that.
Yeah, although Tom Watson, should he be moving to the House of Lords?
I think there's a thorough process that assesses any application for the House of Lords. Tom is a former deputy leader of the Labour Party, so I think, yes, that's an appropriate avenue for him, and his appointment to that is the right thing to do.
What's Labour doing as far as Suella Braverman is concerned? Speaking to your shadow Home Secretary yesterday, she was saying that she wants to know what advice she was given. Where are you with that?
Well, again, why are people like Suella Braverman and Gavin Williamson appointed to government? It's because the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has to make these deals and do that. I think there are major question marks over the conduct of the Home Secretary. I find it, frankly, absurd you could resign from government from a position because of your own wrongdoing and then get reappointed to it in a matter of days. And I think that the motion we had in Parliament yesterday, just trying to get some transparency around this, I think that the reason the government resists that is the more transparency there is, the worse the position looks for them.
Would you support the suggestions in the papers this morning that the highest rate of tax could go up to 50p in the pound? Is that something that Labour would support?
Well, look, you've got to look at any of those decisions in the context of the financial information we'll get in the autumn statement. What I really object to at the moment is the way the government flies a kite every day. You know, they're cutting this, they're removing that, they're going to change that. We can only make those decisions when we see the information that was denied us in the mini-budget and which led to the chaos which has crashed the economy and cost households up and down the country.
Do you support it?
Well, I need to know what the fiscal position of this country is before I can say yes or no
it's
to
a
any
basket
measures
case, I can tell you
put
that.
forward. Well, yes, the damage has been done. It can't be easily reversed. I absolutely accept that. But I think serious countries make decisions based on transparent information and information about what revenue any measure would raise or what the costs would be of cancelling certain things. And I think, frankly, what we're seeing at the minute is a level of uncertainty caused by the government over the last 12 years, as well as the mini-budget, that is actually getting worse every day. You know, every day we might not build nuclear power stations, we might not build HS2. The country cannot cope with this level of instability. Businesses need some certainty to invest, and if you haven't got that from government, and we just don't get that every day, you can't make serious decisions. So we need to see the proper information, then we'll make those decisions.
How do you feel about Matt Hancock going in the jungle?
You know, being a member of Parliament is a job. And it's a privilege and it's a serious job. Now, it's lovely to be something like the Shadow Business Secretary, getting invited on a show like this or being able to stand up at the dispatch box in the House of Commons. But if you're anything in Parliament, that's still a privileged position. And I absolutely object to what seems to be a general view across a lot of Conservative MPs, that it's not in itself a job, that you could be the former Prime Minister and base yourself out of America rather than be the MP for Uxbridge, or you can go on a national television programme whilst being an MP. You know, it demeans politics and the job that we do. And those people, like Matt Hancock, should remember it's a privilege to be a member of Parliament.
Will you be watching him?
I've never watched it. I might tune in to see a little bit of it, which I suppose is the effect that they wanted by putting someone like Matt Hancock in there. I won't be watching it heavily, but I'll probably have a look and see how he gets on.
Will you vote for him having to eat crocodile anus?
I think there'll be a landslide across the country for Matt being volunteered for that kind of thing.